Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to From the Wings. My name is Stephanie Freed, and I'm so glad you're able to join us for this very first episode of our new digital series. In these complicated times, we at the Bushnell are missing our donors, subscribers, patrons, and friends so very much. We miss sitting with you in the Mortensen Hall for a Broadway show, or listening to the Hartford Symphony Orchestra in the Belding, or enjoying a conversation with the Connecticut Forum. But while we're taking this time apart, we thought it would be a good opportunity to take you behind the scenes, talk to you about some of the things we have going on now, in the future, and even reminisce a bit about the past. So every 2 weeks, we're going to explore a different part of the Bushnell story. We're going to give you an insider's look at Broadway, both in New York City and what's to come here in Hartford. We'll talk more about our arts and education programs and how they're responding to this new world we're all living in. We're also going to be able to take a look at the plans we have for bringing you back into the building and what that's going to look like for you when the time is right and safe for us to do that. But before we get started with today's episode, I'd like to just take a moment to remember Oz Grebel. We received the news of Oz's passing a couple of days ago. Oz was so many things to so many people. He was an indefatigable champion of Hartford and of Connecticut. He was a father, a mentor, a friend, and he did all of this with an unwavering kindness. He was chairman of the Bushnell's Board of Trustees from 2005 until 2009, and I know I speak for the entire Bushnell when I say how very much we already miss him, and that our thoughts and our prayers, our love and our condolences are with his family. But for today we are going to celebrate the Bushnell's history, a history which Oz played a very important role in. As you may know, the 1920 season was the 90th anniversary season for the Bushnell, and we've been celebrating all season long. And helping us in that celebration is our season sponsor, longtime friend, and longtime sponsor as well, Bank of America. We could not be more grateful for their support, so thank you very much, Bank of America. To set the stage for today's discussion, let's look back at these first 90 years of magic, moments, and memories at the Bushnell.
Dear friends of Hartford, it pleases me to gift this magnificent hall as a memorial to my father, the Reverend Horace Bushnell. He taught me that somewhere under the stars, God has a job for you to do, and nobody else can do it. And those words fill me with inspiration to this day. I envision a center for the benefit of the public in educational and cultural activities. It will truly be an important gathering space, suitable for concerts and other artistic performances, large and small, lectures, civic, political, and scholarly meetings. All will be welcome, regardless of race, class, or creed. While the structure will be timeless in appearance, it will have every modern convenience. Vital and adaptable, our institution will meet the changing needs and interests of future generations. I foresee a melding of the arts and education to serve as a beacon, touching the lives of everyone in our community. In this new Bushnell Memorial Hall, the arts will come to life on a grand scale, elevating the spirit of our community for decades to come. With gratitude, Dotha Bushnell Hillier.
I always get a little misty when I watched that video. What an incredible first 90 years, and what a gift Dotha Bushnell Hilliard gave to the city of Hartford. For our conversation today, I am delighted to have with me my friend and colleague, Ellen Nattila. Ellen is the Senior Major and Planned Giving Officer for the Bushnell, but I like to call her the Bushnell historian, not for any other reason than she knows a lot about the Bushnell. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having me. Not because I'm an old timer or anything, not because I've been at the Bushnell for such a very long time, right?
Not because of that, no. How long have you been at the Bushnell, Ellen?
30 years. I came in 1990, which was our 60th anniversary year. So long time.
Yeah, for sure. And in those 30 years, am I correct in saying that you spent the entirety of that in fundraising, working on projects like raising the funds we needed to build the Belling Theater, for instance?
You are absolutely correct. I was part of the team for that campaign. And when I first came in 1990, we were embarking on our, at that time, what was our largest campaign prior to the Belting campaign. And that was a fundraising drive for about $25 million for both capital projects, some deeply needed capital projects at the time, and programs. Probably the most notably of which was what we now know as our education programs today. That campaign provided the funding to enable for the planning and the visioning for what is now our Partners Program, which enters its 28th year this season.
Wow. So I have to imagine that in your work in fundraising, you really have a unique perspective both on the history of the Bushnell as well as the future, the direction we're heading, because fundraising is often working to fund our future, not just our present.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. And, thinking back to that very beginning, I have to say, I have thought a lot about our founder, Dotha Bushnell Hilliard, this spring. Yeah. She wrote our Act of Incorporation. We were chartered in 1919. And as everyone just heard sort of so beautifully in the video that was created by our colleagues on the Bushnell team, she laid out a vision for us. But she was thinking about that at a time when the world was experiencing the Spanish flu.
Right.
And I really hadn't thought about that. I hadn't considered that until this spring, that she was in a period very much like the one we are now, where we cannot gather together in large groups safely. And I can only imagine that she was yearning, as we are, for the time to when she would be on the other side of the pandemic and she could see this dream that she was in the process of creating become a reality.
For sure. And understanding, going back to what you were saying about the pandemic, understanding the value, the desire, our human need to be together, to share experiences, to share things. That must have been a really powerful time, and such a visionary person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So she chartered the organization in 1919, a year after the Spanish flu pandemic. Then what happened?
Then, it was really the time for planning, for what would this dream look like? And Dotha had dreamed of creating a memorial to her father, the Reverend Horace Bushnell, who was a 19th century Congregationalist minister, and he was also a thought leader for his time.
And there he is.
There he is, probably reading something that he wrote, because there are volumes and volumes of his sermons and writings in our archives and elsewhere out there. And she visited I think it was 1912, she visited the Springfield Auditorium up the road in Springfield, Massachusetts. It was brand new at the time, and she really liked it. And Dotha decided that she would seek out the architects of that building to build our building. And that was a firm named Corbett, Harrison, and McMurray. They were located in New York City, and Dotha, who was getting on in years at that time and who was a little woman, got herself down to New York City and had an appointment with one of the principals. She met with Mr. Corbett. And there is a story that has been passed down over time that her daughter-in-law, Mary Severance, used to like to tell, that apparently Mr. Corbett went home from work that night and told his wife he had had a funny meeting with a little old lady from Hartford who wanted him to build a very big auditorium up there and who really seemed to mean it. And I think he wasn't entirely sure until she then wired the funds to get going on the project. And then all of them down there knew that she was serious. And I'll just add as a side note, this is the same firm that built Radio City Music Hall. So we do like to think of ourselves sometimes as the dress rehearsal for Radio City. When they got close to the actual physical construction of the buildings, the planning was going on, during the 20s, the roaring 20s. Yeah. Dotha took her money out of the stock market, the money that she was planning on using to fund the construction. And it so happens that she did that in December of 1928. So you and I would be having a very different conversation today if she had waited, say, a year. Certainly she was fortunate, as are we. And I like to think that she was our first very savvy donor as well.
Absolutely. So she both had the gift of foresight. She was a very forward-thinking person, and I think she might have had a leprechaun on her shoulder taking the money out.
I think she might have.
Market fell apart. Okay, so Dotha takes the money out of the stock market. She hires the architects. She builds this remarkable building that we all know and love. Then what?
Well, as I had said, I think that Dotha was always looking for a way to honor her father, his spirit and his values. And I would say most especially his understanding that we all are one common humanity. And Horace had been a vocal proponent about that concept, during his entire life. And outside of his work as a reverend, he kind of took that to another place, which was to be a very strong advocate for public green spaces as a place where we all could come together from all walks of life and celebrate that commonness that we share. He was not only vocal, I think he was long-winded. I think if we went to the City Hall archives and looked up some of the minutes of their meetings, we would find some where he talked for a very, very long time on this subject. But in fact, in tribute to what he did to move that along for the city of Hartford, Bushnell Park was named in Horace's honor just before he died. So he received that news of that honor while he was still with us. I think that Dotha saw the Bushnell as the potential to be the interior counterpart to those public green spaces, to be a place where we could come together and we could celebrate and appreciate the arts. We could engage in important civic dialogue in a civil manner. We could be educated through and by the arts, all while coming together and celebrating that common humanity. And here we are. That came to be in January of 1930. We had 3 evenings of opening celebrations, culminating in a performance on the third evening by the Philadelphia Orchestra. Over 10,000 people came to our hall. At that time, it was the original hall that you see on the screen right now. On those 3 days, there were 3 days worth of coverage, front page coverage, as you can see on the screen, in the Hartford Times and the Current. So it was big news, and it was certainly the manifestation of a dream and a wonderful gift to the city of Hartford and the broader Connecticut community.
Oh, look at those people in their very finest, having
Look at
walked
them.
down.
Look at them. And we know that many of them walked. They walked from Asylum Hill. They walked from the neighborhoods around the Bushnell to be there for those very exciting opening events.
I loved a couple of years ago, we as a staff recreated that photo on the front steps of the Bushnell, and it was so fun to imagine just the energy of that night, of that opening night. You know, I think a lot about that when we had, for instance, when Michelle Obama was at the Bushnell and the entire building was energized and animated, hosting everyone that was here for that, or the opening night, or the opening, the whole 3 weeks Hamilton was here. Every night kind of felt that way. There's an energy, it's palpable.
I agree.
And that is that piece of us being a community convener, bringing folks together. That's really central to who we are.
It is. It is. It absolutely. It is. It is why we're here. You know, and that starts with Dotha, and it comes from that mission and vision that she gave to us in our incorporating documents, which distilled down, and again, as was shared so beautifully in the video, charges us to be a center for the benefit of the public. And Dotha herself, of course, was influenced by her dad and his life. And one of the things that she did do in her architecture was make sure that we could be inspired by him too. So when you come to the Bushnell, and even though we cannot all be there together inside these days, there's no reason you can't go take a walk around the Bushnell and Bushnell Park. You'll see some of Horace's quotes etched into our building. And I think the one that sort of ties most seamlessly with what Dotha was getting to in the mission she gave us is one that talks about lifting the spirit. It is this notion of having great works, great inspiration in hand that elevate our spirit. And that is what the arts can do for us.
Absolutely. And I know those words, elevate the spirit, are a core piece of how we think about everything we do. Does this project, does this initiative, does this piece of work elevate the spirit of our community? So it's really a guiding principle, I think, for us. So we've been through some amazing times. We've also been through some really challenging times with that same community. And, you know, again, where we are today, one can't help but kind of reflect on the past. And, you know, the Bushnell's been here through the Depression, through World War II, Vietnam and Korea, the Civil Rights era, the diminishing of our urban centers in the 70s and 80s. We opened our Belding Theater just months after the September 11th attacks. The 2008 economic crisis. So many difficult times, where the Bushnell was a place for our community to come together. And are there some specific examples of that you can think of?
There sure are, and there are many that relate to all the things that you just kind of touched on, but two that stand out for me in our history are these. The first is around the story of Marian Anderson, the great singer, the great contralto. In 1939, as many people are probably aware, she was denied the right to sing at Constitution Hall by the Daughters of the American Revolution. And at that time, people may think of the fact that later that year, she sang on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial at the invitation of Eleanor Roosevelt. But what wouldn't have been so well known at the time is that our first managing director, who you see pictured here, Bill Mortensen, he led us for almost 40 years. He reached out to her. He wrote her a letter, and he invited her to perform at the Bushnell anytime she wanted to. It was an open invitation of welcome to come. And she did perform at the Bushnell many times. And I love the fact that he did that. Not only that he thought it was the right thing to do, but that he acted on it, that he extended that invitation and was proactive. Another story that comes to mind in our history, in which Bill Mortensen also played a role again, was when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968. Bill Mortensen, in consultation, I think, with other leaders in the city, made the decision to open the Bushnell to the entire community as a place for all of the community to come together to mourn the loss of this great civil rights leader, to remember him, and to be able to do that in community. So those are just a couple of examples of things that kind of stand out in my mind.
It's amazing that Mr. Mortensen was with us for those 40 years, and how he kind of lived into the vision Dotha set. But Dotha couldn't necessarily have known the path the world was going to take, our country was going to take, and he made her vision relevant to the times he was in. And I hope that we are continuing to do that same thing today.
He did, absolutely.
We've also been here for some exciting times, and we've shared those with our community. How about stories from that?
Absolutely. Yes, we have had exciting times. Not only those 3 opening nights, which you and I can only imagine. So if I just had to pick a couple, I would start with the 1996 presidential debate. That was just, it still gives me chills when I think about it. It was a big wow. Yeah. We only had around 10, I don't know, maybe 12 days notice that the debate was going to be at the Bushnell. Our executive director at that time was Doug Evans. Our associate executive director was Ronna Reynolds, and she, similar to Bill Mortensen, actually she exceeded the 40-year mark. She was with us as a leader for just over 40 years, but those two led the team and did a magnificent job of making this happen, in those 10 to 12 days, having the debate come here and really resulting in one of the most, if not the most, signature moment in our 90-year history. It really was, it was extraordinary. And because I have been here so long, I can actually remember and feel what that was like. And it was just tremendous.
Since I've been here, it's been in the lore. It has been always as a shining moment of Bushnell, the entire Bushnell team kind of coming together, coalescing around this really exciting, challenging, meaningful project. And, Ronna and Doug are giants in the Bushnell's history. And I had the great pleasure of knowing Ronna, still know her. I haven't met Doug, but boy, those two, I think they definitely led us through some pretty remarkable times.
They sure did. They sure did. And another one of those times, which also occurred in the mid-90s, in 1995, it was the first time that Phantom of the Opera came to the Bushnell. And it was really the first blockbuster event that we had at the Bushnell, blockbuster Broadway event. It sat down here for 5.5 weeks, which is an extraordinary amount of time still, even these days. We had full houses every night. Over 100,000 people came through our doors just for that event. And it was tremendous, not only for the Bushnell, but for the, there was a real economic impact for the city of Hartford and the region as well. And it was just exciting. We may have some folks who are with us, who are joining us for this episode today, who remember coming to Phantom in 1995. But if you don't, you might have come to Hamilton a couple of years ago. And I would say it was that kind of feeling. When you were talking, Stephanie, about, those folks who were here for the first nights, or when Michelle Obama came, to me, I almost get this feeling like my feet aren't even touching the ground. It's that exciting.
Yeah, you're just moving through the hall in this, it feels almost surreal. You're moving, the energy propels you. It's remarkable. We do have a long history of being the place for Broadway in Connecticut. From, we're an important part of the Broadway touring landscape. We receive many, if not all, of the first runs of Broadway musicals from, back in the 90s, like you're talking about, Miss Saigon to Lion King, Wicked, Hamilton. We bring community together to talk about, or we bring community together to experience these shows. And I love the stories. Being I was a stage manager before I went into fundraising and the work I do now. The technical piece of things, how our building had to evolve to be able to accommodate the blockbusters, starting with Phantom of the Opera, for instance. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Any stories that you have about the building being modified?
I can. We knocked down walls is what we did for Phantom when it came. And this was part of that campaign that I mentioned earlier in the early 1990s. We literally had to knock down the back wall of the theater. We had one loading dock, which served its purpose for, those first 65 years, but wasn't going to be enough to accommodate Phantom or the larger shows that we knew would be coming in the future. So at that time, we added a second loading dock so that Phantom could come. We also reinforced the ceiling so that the chandelier, the famous chandelier, could do what it's supposed to do when Phantom is in your house. Later on, when Lion King came for the first time, we knocked down another wall. And that was the back wall actually to the green room.
Okay.
It was needed so that Pride Rock could exit stage right and have a place to reside. We don't have a lot of wing space stage right. Anyone who's taken a tour might remember that.
Sure, it's very tight. Yeah, very tight.
It's super tight. So no one but Pride Rock got the green room, and the little garage door is still there. If you are a guest in the green room, it's tastefully covered by some curtains, but the door is there in case we ever need it for something for a show again.
For the next time we have Lion King.
For the next time Lion King's at the Bushnell.
Very much. And, it just goes to show we'll do anything for a great show, right? If there's a great show to come, we're going to figure it out. But, something else that's important, I think, to understand about the Bushnell is Broadway is important. It's not just Broadway, though, right? There's so much more in terms of what's on our stages.
There is so much more. And again, since we were looking back at the beginning of this, it started with Dotha, this Center for the Benefit of the Public. She talks about all the ways in which we should be doing that. And we are so fortunate that the Hartford Symphony Orchestra chooses to have the Bushnell be its resident home. And they have just celebrated their 75th anniversary recently, and they perform in both of our halls, their classical series, their masterwork series in Belding Theater, their pop series in Mortensen Hall. The Connecticut Forum brings incredible dialogue and conversation to Mortensen Hall, and they too, 25 years now, they have been in our community, and we have been fortunate to have them presenting their incredible work at the Bushnell.
I walked away from every single one of those feeling sometimes a little bit dumber because there was so much I didn't know about something, but always feeling a little bit smarter, a little bit more like I understand things differently. I have a broader perspective.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. They fill a very unique role in our community. They actually fill a unique role in part of our mission, in delivering on part of our mission.
Indeed.
Absolutely. There are so many more things, from the Nutmeg Ballet and generations of family enjoying the Nutcracker and bringing their children, to more local events like dance recitals, which are a tradition at the Bushnell from early on, all the way up until this decade. And I just can't even imagine being 6 years old and having Mortensen Hall be your first stage for a performance.
Right. I know you.
I'm going to jump in here and see if people can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I hope that means other people can hear you now.
My headphones exited me from the conversation. I was just saying, I know you received an email from a patron who was sharing their story about the dance recital with Miss Phyllis on our stage.
Yes.
And back in 2011, we did the What's Your Story campaign, and I received gobs of letters about Miss Phyllis. So yes, I think the Bushnell plays not just a role where you came to see something, but the experience of having been on the stage and danced on the stage. So special.
Right. So true.
Yeah.
So true. I'm thinking that maybe we can pass the microphone and I can ask you a question or two.
Sure. I know that we are running tight on our time. So
you tell me, what do you want to do here?
Well, let's go forward. Let's talk a little bit about the future.
Okay.
You know, I think that as we've reflected, we've seen the path that the Bushnell has taken from this hall that was originally opened. We did lots of symphony to then you have the advent of touring Broadway, you have local arts, all of this. As we continue to move forward as a center of benefit for the public, one of the places, well, actually two of the places I really see us growing and evolving is in our arts and education area, as well as in digital technology and using digital technology to provide new entertainment experiences. So if I'm talking about our arts and education programs, and on the screen now, you can see some footage from our in-classroom partners programs. These programs are so important. And as many of you can imagine, in the current environment where we went to virtual learning and everybody was out of the classroom and at home, the Bushnell found a way to work with a local town to provide music education virtually. And that pilot, that initiative is growing and expanding. And our Senior Vice President for Education and Community Engagement, Yolande Spears, she is remarkable. I aspire to be her. She's terrific. She and her team are working together with schools and towns across our state to figure out how best we can meet their needs in the classroom. The arts are not just for art's sake. The arts as a means to bridge the education gap, to focus on core curriculum. How do we do that in new and innovative ways that respond to where our state is today, our country is today? So there will be a future From the Wings episode, probably maybe like our fourth or fifth one, where we'll spend some time with Yolande talking about that.
Excellent.
Yeah, and then as far as what's to come with entertainment, if we take a minute and talk about Broadway before I talk about our digital technologies and the ways we're looking to enhance and expand entertainment options and opportunities there. When we talk about Broadway for just a minute, I keep hearing and reading things where it says, Broadway's dark, Broadway's dark. Broadway's not dark. Those ghost lights are burning on every stage in New York, just like the ghost lights burn on our stage here in Hartford, our two stages. There is so much creative work that is continuing to happen. If you're connected with us, those of you listening, and Ellen, I know you are because I see you. If you're connected with us on our Facebook and Instagram platforms, you'll see some of that creative output that's happening now. And I hope you are connected, because while we can't be together, we can continue to share those arts experiences in these virtual ways. We also have our e-club, which again, if you're not on our e-club yet, I encourage you to sign up. You can find it at bushnell.org/e-club. We promise not to email you a ton, but every Friday we do something called Curtain Call, and it's a digital arts roundup. It gives you things to check out, things to look at over the weekend. If there is a streaming opportunity for something, we'll share that with you. And we'll also give you updates about what we're working on at the Bushnell. So I do hope that you'll take advantage of some of that creativity that's out there right now.
That is terrific, I would just add. And I know that's your area, Stephanie, that pulls that together. I think there's a lot of great content that you provide in that.
There is, and I'll say thank you on behalf of the team. I have nothing to do with it, but those that do it do a phenomenal job. So thanks, Ellen. And so last, let's talk a little bit about digital technology. The Bushnell, we've always been committed to remaining at the front of the curve of doing the newest thing as soon as we can. And our president and CEO, David Fay, is particularly committed to the use of digital technology to create arts experiences. So, for instance, from on stages, American in Paris, Anastasia used projection. In our lobby, which you can see now, I hope so many of you had the chance to see this during Anastasia, but this is called digital mapping and creating projection on surfaces where those surfaces actually become part of the projection. But imagine that expanded. Imagine that where you're moving through the building, experiencing pieces of the building, moving and shifting and telling a story, that the building is no longer inanimate. It's actually an animated experience. There's a lot that's being worked on there, and there will be a From the Wings about that. So tune in.
Glad to hear it.
Yes, right. I think there's going to be a From the Wings about so many things. But we continue every day to be inspired by our founder and by our namesake. They were visionary, they were thoughtful, they were community minded. And I know I personally, but all of us, I think, are inspired by the two of them. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I absolutely agree with you. And we've talked a lot, because this was today's topic, about our history and Dotha and her vision. And I know that you and I, speaking on behalf of the entire organization, also are so grateful for our community today. It is our patrons and our donors who have sustained us through all these decades, who are so meaningful and more meaningful than ever right now, while we are all going through this particularly difficult time. And we just could not be more thankful for that community.
Absolutely. And I know that you, like me, are so ready to be back in the building.
Yes, please.
And, to let everyone out there know, we are working hard now to create the plans and the protocols that we're going to need to bring you back in safely when we are allowed to open again. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, there'll be a From the Wings about that, that we'll be able to share with you what that's going to look like when the time is right, when it's safe to do so. So Ellen, it looks like our time is up. We're actually a little bit over, but I wanted to thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your thoughts on the Bushnell's remarkable history. So thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And thanks to all who joined us today.
Absolutely. I also want to take this opportunity to once again thank our season sponsor, Bank of America. And to learn more about the Bushnell's first 90 years, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where you can watch our series of 90 by 90 videos. These 90-second videos each feature a person or a group or a time that's pivotal to the Bushnell's history. And you can also check out the portrait series that we'll begin sharing on also Facebook and Instagram, which looks at individuals throughout our history that have played pivotal roles in making the Bushnell who we are today. And thank you for joining us. In these challenging times, our friends, donors, patrons, and subscribers are truly the lifeblood and foundation of the Bushnell. Your support through giving, subscription, ticket buying, that sustains us and ensures that we'll be here when the time is right to bring you back. So if you'd like to make a gift to continue this work today, visit us at bushnell.org/donate now. I hope you'll join us for our next conversation about Broadway, what's to come in New York City, and what's to come here at the Bushnell with Vice President of Programs, Rick Waldman. Again, thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you at the Bushnell again soon. Take care.